amazing audio and getting Mia to speak. I would like to introduce Dr. Anthony Monteiro, who is a former professor here at Temple and a Du Boisian scholar, a North Philadelphia activist, and one of the members of Saturday Free School. So without further ado, Dr. Anthony Monteiro.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I know it's late. This has been a long day, and I've entitled what I'm going to say, Huey P. Newton's Gifts to the Spiritual and Ideological Lives of Young People. And it seems like this conference has been just that, a study of Huey P. Newton's gifts to the young generation. Huey P. Newton was a co-founder of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, which became the Black Panther Party. And he remains a figure of singular significance and history, and most importantly to the younger generations. His examples of discipline, his rootedness in the commitment to the people, his revolutionary generosity and humility, his love for humanity, especially the poor and suffering, establishes an example the young must learn from. We must be guided in our work by the integrity and courage he lived by. His life demonstrates to all of us what it means to be a revolutionary. So powerful is this example that all revolutionaries continue in one or another way to be measured by his example. So deep was his commitment to the poor and suffering of the world that at the height of the war of aggression of the United States against the Vietnamese people, he offered to send Black Panthers to fight with the National Liberation Forces in Vietnam. He made a similar offer to the forces of liberation fighting in then Portuguese-occupied Mozambique. Huey received what today would be considered an old-fashioned, segregated, and unequal education in the Oakland public schools. He, quote, tested, end quote, as retarded and uneducable. He would end up teaching himself to read after graduating from high school. He was also educated in the Black Pentecostal church, where his father was a minister. He was educated as well in the streets by the life of the Black proletariat, by self-educated men and women who loved books and knowledge, and by the pimps, hustlers, and what he would later define as a lumpen proletariat. But in the end, he was self-educated. The force of his critical imagination stretches beyond the time-space moment of his physical existence. For Huey, there will be no rest. His legacy remains an active force for revolutionary change and the well-being of the people. His vision stretches to the unforeseen. Huey seemed in life incapable of conceiving any idea that was not on a grand scale. Yet more than any of this, his life and thought transformed the geography of revolutionary and ideological discourse and debate in the U.S. and the world. Ironically, the further we get from the time he lived, the more prescient and impactful his presence become. Besides being a revolutionary, he was prophetic and a prophetic voice of the people. Like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Huey P. Newton was a revolutionary genius, possessing extraordinary courage in the face of capitalist and racist brutality, and of the 20-year campaign of the U.S. state to murder him. He was an organic revolutionary, a thinker and leader of the downtrodden. He confronted armed police with arms, but more, he created programs to help the poor. In his memoir, Revolutionary Suicide, a manual for revolutionaries, he spoke in words similar to Martin Luther King Jr. In fact, I would consider Revolutionary Suicide to be the equal of the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I think it should be taught and studied as such. Revolutionary Suicide presents Newton as a revolutionary seeking not merely to illuminate the problems faced by the people, but to present solutions to those problems. We witness his concerns with philosophy, ideology, theory, organization, and practice. For him, the solution to all problems begin with the people and with revolutionary love for the people, a love so compelling that he was willing to die for the people. He insisted that in order that the people trust revolutionaries, they must know that the revolutionaries are ready to die for the causes that they stand for. Three themes are especially compelling in this book. First, the existence or non-existence of God. Second, revolutionary and romantic love. And third, the revolutionary's confrontation with death. He approaches each as a revolutionary, for whom these issues take on particular significance because of the imperative of sacrifice assumed by revolutionaries, especially in times of intense struggle. Newton put love of the people above all other forms of love. Only through this love could one assume his or her revolutionary duties and consistently engage the enemies of the people. Revolutionary love is what John Coltrane called a love supreme. Martin Luther King was a Christian, Newton was a non-believer, but they both radiated revolutionary love and the struggle for freedom. The love supreme transcends the individual and the romantic love. It is a love that inspires the individual to sacrifice herself or himself for the people and for principle. For King, the love of God and the love of the people were a single love, because as is insisted in 1 John of the New Testament of the King James Bible, God is love. And God's love can become manifest through individuals to the extent they become servants of the poor and oppressed. Newton's life was dedicated to bringing about a revolution that would overturn the capitalist economic system, imperialism, and racial and colonial oppression. King fought to overturn the systems of racist oppression and war, and in so doing he called for a revolution of values which would lead to a, in King's words, beloved community of human beings, which was and is incompatible with capitalist greed and selfishness. Hence, a love supreme is by its very definition revolutionary love. In understanding Huey Newton, we are compelled to lift up his embrace of love as decisive to revolutionary action and sacrifice. Huey would have certainly agreed with Che Guevara, and did agree with Che Guevara, who famously declared, and need I mention, revolution is an act of love. After love for the people, a profoundly revolutionary principle, there's the struggle for ideological clarity. In an essay of July 1969 entitled simply Prison, Huey asserts that people are more than their physical or material beings. They are also, and in many ways more significantly, their ideas, their ideology, their values and beliefs. One's ideology, whether it is revolutionary or counter-revolutionary, whether it leads to what Newton called reactionary or revolutionary suicide, whether it puts selfish and egotistical concerns first, or whether it puts the people and revolutionary change first, are more important than one's physical body. Therefore, the state can imprison the body or even kill the physical being and still not kill the person, because her or his ideas, if they are revolutionary, will live on after the physical being is gone. His eulogy for Jonathan Jackson, the younger brother of George Jackson, and William Christmas, both killed in the attack upon the Marin County Courthouse. The eulogy presented by Huey Newton in August 1970 defiantly proclaimed, and I quote, "If the penalty for the quest for freedom is death, then by death we escape to freedom." This idea was expressed 50 years earlier by W.E.B. Du Bois in an essay entitled "The Immortal Child," holding that what we do well and the genius produced by the oppressed people themselves will enrich generations of resistance. Newton therefore looked upon the Black Panther Party in the way that Fidel Castro saw the July 26 movement, the revolutionary movement that overthrew the Batista regime in Cuba, as an instrument of the political and ideological education of the people. Huey Newton believed that nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come, and no idea is more powerful than an idea that has been connected to the masses of people. He knew that it would be the people, not the party, that would make the revolution. Therefore, the people must be prepared through ideas and struggle to carry out their struggle for freedom. On this point, he differed from his colleague and comrade Eldridge Cleaver, who, in his essence, believed that a small band of revolutionaries without an educated people could make revolution a mistake. However, ideas involve a moral choice and moral commitments. What side are you on? Are you consistent in your love for the people? And are you prepared to sacrifice in the cause of the people? The principles of revolutionary love for the people and ideological clarity are inextricably linked. They are inseparable. Without love for the people, a revolutionary cannot fight consistently for ideological clarity. And conversely, love for the people informs and inspires ideological clarity. Antonio Gramsci, the Italian revolutionary, understood, like Huey did, that the struggle for freedom is a long and protracted one, and revolutionaries recognize the dialectical process by which the people develop, leading to the critical moment when they, the people, are prepared to seize power from their oppressors. Like the Martinican thinker and revolutionary Frantz Fanon, Huey acknowledged that the oppressed go through moments of development when they are constantly changing and coming into recognition of themselves as human and therefore as capable of fighting for freedom. It is at that moment that they clearly understand who their oppressors are and what they must do. Revolutionary practice, first and foremost, is about the fight for principled unity of the people. Principled unity is a political practice. It places the needs of the people above those of individuals or individual groups, or merely parties or organizations of the people. The principle of principled unity requires highly developed science and even political art. It demands an understanding of the methods of trialectical logic as a more developed form of dialectical logic. It understands the principle of negation, but it also understands multiple conditions of contradictions and multiple forms of the negation of the constant development of phenomena. These sophisticated methods of knowing are necessary to the revolutionary understanding and solving of contradictions among the people. Principled unity should be expressed across the color, cultural, and civilizational lines. Huey called this unity revolutionary intercommunalism. We in the Saturday Free School call it into civilizational unity. As the traditional nation state recedes into history and the face of the great movement of humanity we are witnessing what I call the sixth great human diaspora, the movement of people from one place of the planet to another. The nation state as a principal form of sovereignty, rule, identity, and citizenship is being transformed into what are now civilizational and multi-civilizational states, replacing again the nation state. This demands inter-civilizational unity within nations and across national boundaries. It does not deny internationalism, it, however, dialectically supersedes it. The struggle for freedom and to build a new economic system demands a new form of state power and new forms of state formation, what I would call an inter-civilizational or multi-civilizational state. Lastly, Huey understood that for a people revolution to go forward, there must be a cultural revolution. And by culture is meant art, music, literature, film, dance, and other expressive arts. However, it also means issues of gender, sexuality, and moralities that acknowledge both differences, but most importantly, upholds unity in and through difference. However, the most important revolutionary principle is unity of the people for revolutionary change, and no other principle must interrupt that most fundamental principle of revolutionaries, uniting the people against their oppressors. This morality is neither transactional nor up for compromise. Equality among the people, a recognition of difference, yet a struggle for a culture and modes of discourse and relations among the people, which fights for revolutionary and principled unity. As has been said all day, we are in a moment of profound crisis of the system of capitalism, white supremacy, and imperialism, and thus on the threshold of possible radical transformation of the world. A new axis of human civilization is about to be born. The age of Europe is coming to an end. The collapse of Europe is upon us, and the signs are everywhere we look. A new age, the age of humanity, is being born, where, to use W.E.B. Du Bois's notion, Pan-Africa and Pan-Asia unite to create the new world. Finally, I would just say, in just gratitude to the Black-Brown Coalition, and in agreement with, I don't know who said it just before me, you all are the vanguard of the young generation. By educating yourself and your colleagues, you are preparing yourself for perhaps the most difficult struggles that any generation that preceded you has entered upon. But at the same time, you assume the stage of history at the very moment when the contradictions of the system are so intense that the system now faces not only a crisis, but an existential crisis, a crisis of its existence. And while you fight at Temple University or at other universities, you are fighting at institutions and places where the ruling class attempts to produce and reproduce its spokesmen and spokeswomen. And by challenging the nature and substance of what is called, and I put quotes around this, higher education, that's what you are, that is even education, not even higher education. By challenging that, you are saying that these institutions are institutions of the past and not of the future, and that the future is what you all are about, because without a future, there is no hope. And with a sense of a future, there's profound hope. So once again, thank you very, very much. I've enjoyed every moment of this.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Dr. Monteiro. I'm going to make this short and sweet. Don't worry, I know y'all are talked out. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Wanda. To close out this fantastic day, we want to urge you that our work here is not done. To the elders in the room that have built space, we thank you for the guidance and revolutionary ideas and movements that have brought younger generations closer to questioning the systems around us. Your work is used for our inspiration as youth. Huey once said, "The revolution has always been in the hands of the young. The young always inherit the revolution. If you stop struggling, then you stop life." Huey has taught us that we still have the power, and that despite the struggle going from generation to generation, we still have that power. That power is found through revolution. We saw this through the breakfast programs, the health clinics that were started in the 1960s and the 1970s that are still running efficiently today, and the legacy of Huey and the Black Panthers. I call to my youth, my peers, that our time is now. Our time is now to connect the communities that have been separated for far too long, to create spaces where all people can come together and mobilize like we have done with and for figures like Huey, Angela, Dr. Regina Jennings, Yvonne, Mumia, Tony Monteiro, Pam Africa, Move 9, and others. And you don't just hit repost on the screen. You hit up the streets, you join those organizations, you create and be for the movement. Do not give up, my peers. This is a call to action for all people in the struggle for world peace and self-determination. Be aware of your surroundings. To close off, I would just want to leave you with this statement from Mumia. If you ain't angry, you ain't paying attention. Thank you so much.
Beautiful, Devo, beautiful, beautiful.